Elon Musk, one of the most powerful men in the world, had always believed in science and logic. But one day, in a quiet park, he met a little girl with a strong belief in God. When Elon asked why she believed, her answer made his heart freeze, and tears welled up in his eyes. This story would open a new perspective on faith, where even a great inventor has to face questions that logic cannot answer. Elon Musk sat on a wooden bench in the small park, gazing at the clear blue sky. Today was not a day to think about big projects or the future of technology. He just wanted to find peace, to allow his mind to take a break from the immense pressures. Beneath the gentle sunlight, everything seemed to slow down in that moment of tranquility. Suddenly, a clear laugh, like the sound of a bell, interrupted his thoughts. A little girl, around 6 or 7 years old, was playing nearby, spinning around like a little whirlwind. Her eyes sparkled with innocence and joy. Full of life, Elon smiled softly, feeling a warmth stir within his soul, but then quickly returned to his own thoughts. Just a moment later, the little girl ran up to him, her eyes shining as she looked at him. She stopped right in front of Elon, waving her hand as if she wanted to introduce herself to the stranger sitting alone. "Sir, do you believe in God?" she asked, her voice as pure and innocent as the sound of a stream. Elon was surprised, unable to imagine that a child would ask such a deep question. He paused for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Finally, he gently replied, "I honestly don't know. I've always felt like I haven't found the right answer yet." The little girl looked at him seriously, her eyes bright as stars. "You don't believe in God? God is real," she said, her voice calm but full of conviction. Elon couldn't help but feel something strange. How could a child speak so confidently about something he had been searching for? Could this little girl understand something he hadn't yet felt? "I've never thought about it in such a simple way. Why do you believe in God?" Elon asked, curiosity evident on his face. The little girl sat down beside him, her small legs swinging. She tilted her head, smiling at him with an innocent yet knowing expression. "God is always with me, sir," she said softly, her voice like a cool breeze. "Even though I can't see him, I know he is always there, by my side." Elon fell silent, a feeling of confusion washing over him. How could she trust in something invisible and intangible like that? Was it the innocence of childhood that allowed her to see things differently? "Would you like to know why I'm so sure of it?" the little girl asked, her eyes sparkling, waiting for a response. Elon nodded, unable to resist his curiosity. "Yes, please explain." The little girl looked up at the sky, pointing towards the gently drifting clouds, then spoke in a calm voice, as if revealing a long-held secret. "God created everything. He created the sky, the earth, the trees, the birds, and all of us too. He is everywhere, in everything we see and feel." Elon said nothing, but a strange feeling rose within him. The girl's words, though simple, made him think deeply. Throughout his life, he had searched for understanding in the vast universe, but he had never thought about it this way. Could there be something invisible, infinite, yet powerful like this? He looked up at the night sky, where the stars were beginning to twinkle. In that quiet moment, Elon felt small, and it seemed as though the questions he had been running from all this time no longer needed immediate answers. Maybe, sometimes, the answers come from the most unexpected places. As the little girl continued her story, Elon felt a miraculous sensation rising in his heart, a feeling he had never experienced before. Her words seemed to linger in the air around him, making it impossible to shake them from his mind. How could a child speak with such confidence? Her words flowed like a clear stream, trickling through the corners of his soul. Could faith in God be that simple, and perhaps stronger than all the theories and research he had spent his life seeking? "Don't you believe in God?" the little girl asked again, her tone softer, but still full of sincerity. Elon took a deep breath, not rushing to answer. He looked at the little girl and felt those deep questions awaken a part of him he hadn't realized was there. "I don't know. I've always believed in things that can be seen and measured," he said, his voice calm. "I've spent my life researching, trying to understand this world through science. And until now, I've never seen anything that could be called God." The little girl looked at him intently, her eyes shining as if she fully understood what he was saying, but without any sign of rejection. "But have you ever tried to feel God in your heart?" she asked. Her tiny hands gently clasped together as if holding something invisible. Just feel? Elon couldn't help but ponder that question. How could one believe in something they can't see or prove? But there was something in the girl's tone, in her gaze, that made him begin to doubt the beliefs he had held for so many years. Elon sat there, his eyes fixed on the little girl, as she continued to share thoughts that were innocent yet surprisingly powerful. "You don't need to see him to know he's here," she continued, her voice like a whisper. "When I feel sad or scared, I just talk to him. I pray, and immediately, I feel a sense of relief." Elon looked at the little girl, feeling confused, his mind overwhelmed with conflicting thoughts. Could it really be like that? Could just a simple prayer, just a simple belief, help him find the peace he had lost so long ago? "So if I try praying too, will I feel relieved?" Elon asked, his voice tinged with doubt but also curiosity. The little girl smiled, her bright smile like a beam of light in the darkness. "I don't know if you'll feel it right away, but I'm sure he's listening. And he's always there, right beside you." Her words, soft and simple, carried a strange power. Elon felt as though a large door was opening, though he still wasn't sure if he could step through it. But something inside him had changed now. A feeling he couldn't explain, only sense. The little girl continued sharing, her pure voice like a gentle stream, captivating his heart. "Sometimes, I just sit by myself and let everything around me become still," she said, her gaze distant as though recounting something mystical. "When silence surrounds me, I feel God's presence. He doesn't speak, but I know he's here, surrounding me with endless love." Elon, a man who had lived his whole life in the world of reason and experimentation, was taken aback. This little girl, with her pure and simple faith, might be opening a world to him he had never considered. Had he, all these years, overlooked something that could only be felt with the heart, not through science? Under the sunset, as night began to fall, the little girl continued telling her true beliefs. Each story she shared was like a small miracle, melting Elon's doubts bit by bit. But inside him, one question lingered, unshakable. If God really exists, why is there so much suffering in the world? Elon asked, his voice sinking as if the question had haunted him his whole life. He had witnessed suffering and loss, endless wars, the invisible pain of the unfortunate. How could a merciful God allow all of this to happen? The little girl paused, thinking for a long moment, then looked at him with gentle but resolute eyes. "That's a big question," she replied slowly, as if carefully considering each word. "But my mom once said that sometimes pain is the way we recognize the strength within ourselves. God doesn't want us to suffer, but He understands that through trials, we grow and find a greater part of ourselves." Elon fell silent, the little girl's answer like a ray of light in the dark. Could suffering really have a deeper reason? Not just be a random occurrence? Could each pain he had witnessed, each tragedy he thought was meaningless, actually teach us something about resilience? About the ability to rise from destruction? Throughout his life, Elon had always thought that life was a series of coincidences, that the world was a place of chaos and brutality. But now, a child barely out of her infancy had opened up a new perspective for him. Perhaps pain is the fire that sharpens human nature, helping them become stronger and deeper. The little girl continued speaking, her voice gentle but filled with determination, as if each word she uttered was a reminder that she herself needed to listen to. "My dad once said that sometimes we only see a part of the story, but God sees every corner of it, from beginning to end. The difficulties we face now may bring us to our knees, but one day, when everything is over, we'll understand the reason behind it all." The little girl shared, her eyes gazing far into the distance, as if seeing something only she could understand. Elon remained silent, her words echoing in his mind, like a rising wave, pushing his conflicting thoughts. He wondered if he had been running in the wrong direction, failing to recognize the hidden corners of life that he had long overlooked. Every success in his career had been tied to painful challenges. But that was in the world of technology, breakthrough advancements. Today, this story was something entirely different. It was about life, about what truly mattered that he had never thought to question. Elon felt a sense of confusion. How could a child view life so profoundly? How could she speak about things that he was just beginning to understand? He gently leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment, as if trying to recapture a feeling he had lost long ago. It seemed that something inside him was awakening, a sensation that the little girl's words had stirred. When he opened his eyes, he looked at the little girl, no longer feeling doubt or skepticism. "You speak as if you understand everything. Why do you believe in God so strongly? Is there something in your past that has made you believe so deeply?" The little girl lowered her head, her gaze becoming softer, as if touching a distant memory. She did not rush to answer but let the silence fill the space. Elon sensed that she was facing something very deep, something only she knew. Finally, the little girl sighed softly, her voice no longer steady like before, but trembling. "The thing is, my mom was very sick last year. The doctors said she wouldn't make it. Everyone in the family was terrified. I was too." She paused, the sorrow quietly spreading through the space. Elon could see the little girl struggling with her emotions, the painful memories resurfacing in her mind. After a moment, the little girl continued, "But at that time, I didn't know what to do. I just prayed, not because I thought things would change right away, but because I felt that no matter what happened, God wouldn't abandon us." The little girl's voice dropped, her gaze filled with sadness but no longer fear. Elon felt something tighten in his heart, as if he was being drawn into her story, into the profound truths he had never wanted to face. Elon sat in silence, his eyes never leaving the little girl, giving her the space she needed to think and speak what she wanted to share. The little girl, though small, seemed to carry within her a resilience far beyond her years. "I prayed, every night, after everything sank into darkness," the little girl began, her voice drenched in sorrow but also filled with hope. "I prayed for God to do something to help my mom. I didn't know if he was listening, but I kept praying. Each word spoken was a new belief planted in my heart." She paused, her eyes lighting up with a spark, as if receiving something that couldn't be put into words. Elon said nothing, only listened, knowing that in moments like this, every word held its own power. "And then, one night, after I finished my prayer, everything changed," the little girl continued, her voice soft as a whisper. "I felt a strange strength fill my heart, a feeling I couldn't put into words. I was no longer afraid. I just knew, deep within my heart, that something had heard me." Elon squinted, never having thought that prayers could bring about such great change. He had always thought of them as comforting words during hard times. But now, before him stood a little girl who had witnessed and endured pain. And yet she believed that an invisible force had responded to her. "What happened next?" Elon asked, his voice rising like a question seeking the truth, though tinged with self-doubt. The little girl didn't answer immediately. She looked up, gazing out the window as if recalling every moment from the past. "My mom started getting better," the little girl said, her voice full of emotion. "Gentle but firm, not right away, but day by day, she became stronger. The doctors couldn't explain it, but I believe it was God working in my mom." Elon felt a rush of conflicting thoughts in his mind. He couldn't make sense of what he had just heard, couldn't find a logical explanation through science. But there was one thing he couldn't deny. The little girl believed in the miracle she had recognized within herself. "Do you think it was a miracle?" Elon asked, unable to suppress his curiosity, though a great doubt lingered in his heart. The little girl nodded, a small smile appearing on her face, as if she understood everything she had said. "Yes, it was a miracle. God didn't leave my mom, even in the darkest times. And if my mom couldn't make it, I still believe he would always be with us." Elon couldn't help but be shaken by her words. How could a child hold such a strong faith, even when the future might not turn out as she hoped? How could she believe in something greater than herself, despite all the unseen things? A wave of indescribable emotion surged within Elon. The faith the little girl showed was not just a belief that something good would come. It was a firm belief in an invisible force, something greater than anything he had ever known. She wasn't just praying for a miracle. She believed that even in suffering, God would always be present, never abandoning her. The evening light from the setting sun gently bathed the space around them in golden hues. Birds flew across the park, cutting through the silence, creating a perfect natural picture. Elon sat there, a heavy feeling rising in his chest, as if each passing moment carried with it an inexplicable burden. The little girl's story felt like a wave crashing against the shore of his soul, stirring emotions he had long tried to bury. He had once taken pride in his logical intellect. his steadfast belief in science and what could be explained. But now, faced with the unwavering faith of the little girl, he began to feel as though he was standing before a chasm he couldn't see the bottom of. "Have you ever thought that it might just be a coincidence?" Elon asked, his voice gentle but filled with confusion. "How can you be so sure?" The little girl looked at him, her gaze clear and calm, as if there was no rush. "I think that sometimes, when everything goes beyond our understanding, we just have to trust," she replied, each word like a gentle breeze soothing the tangled thoughts in Elon's mind. Because sometimes, faith is not about having a clear answer, but about accepting the things that cannot be explained. Elon sat still, feeling as though some protective layer around him had begun to crack. How could a child see the world so clearly, while he, a man always seeking reasons, felt as though he were lost? But what about the pain and injustice in the world? Elon continued, still burdened with questions he couldn't find answers to. Why is there suffering if God really exists? The little girl lowered her head slightly, as if contemplating this question. After a moment, she responded, her voice both firm and warm. "I once asked my mom that question. She told me that we are given freedom, and sometimes people make mistakes. But that doesn't mean God isn't with us when things go wrong. He always helps us get through challenges we can't face alone." A long moment passed. Elon felt the little girl's words like faint rays of light piercing through the night, gradually opening a door he had never dared to look through. Perhaps, within those sufferings, there was a deeper reason that he hadn't recognized. He looked at the little girl, his eyes betraying his surprise and confusion. How could a child, with all her limitations, possess a wisdom and peace that even he, with all his knowledge and accomplishments, could not attain? Then, how can we understand all of this? Elon asked, his voice softer but still carrying a lingering doubt that was not easy to shake off. The little girl smiled, a smile that was not without intelligence, but simple like a sharing of deep compassion. "We don't have to understand everything," she said, her voice light, bringing a sense of relief. "Sometimes, we just need to trust in something greater than ourselves." Elon was left speechless. He could feel a new energy, a warm wave of emotion surrounding him, but at the same time, it was filled with unease. Perhaps, what he was missing in his life wasn't scientific answers, but a deep faith in the invisible things, a faith that this little girl had found in her challenging life. In the encompassing silence, Elon felt the depth of the unanswered questions, and for the first time in a long time, he realized he was no longer seeking more answers, but only needed to accept that there are things in life he must believe in, not understand. The evening quietly faded, dyeing the sky with a mysterious hue, from pale yellow to vibrant reds, and then slowly descending into deep purples. Elon stood there, his heart heavy with unspoken thoughts. All the theories, all the discoveries he had pursued for years suddenly seemed vague and unfamiliar. The questions without answers still lingered in his mind, but now, they were no longer just scientific questions. The little girl sat beside him, her eyes clear as if she could see through the feelings in his heart. She suddenly stood up, gently walked closer, then unexpectedly looked up at him with a sincere, clear gaze and asked a poetic question. "Have you ever thought about something greater than all that we see?" Elon was taken aback, as if the question had thrown him off track. He didn't think he could answer such a question, but he couldn't ignore it either. "Maybe, I'm not sure," he replied, but his voice seemed to have lost all the confidence he had carried throughout his life. The little girl didn't rush, just gently smiled, a simple and comforting smile, as if she had already anticipated that answer. "It's okay, uncle. No one can understand everything right away. God won't make us find all the answers. Just open your heart." Her words were gentle, yet they brought Elon a profound and strange feeling. He felt comforted by those simple words, a comfort he had never experienced before. Thoughts about science, logic, and the theoretical pieces he had once clung to now seemed distant. As if some invisible force was pulling him into a different dimension, a dimension he could not explain with the rules and theorems he had learned all his life. "I've always tried to explain everything the way I understood," Elon said, his voice growing quieter, full of confusion. "I don't know if everything really has a reason." The little girl looked up at the sky, her bright eyes sparkling as if lost in thoughts that she couldn't express. After a moment, she spoke, her voice soft yet full of meaning. My mom always says that the sunset is a sign of great love. Even though we can't see him, he is always near. In every peaceful moment, Elon looked up at the sky. The scene suddenly appeared different in his eyes. The clouds gently floated across the sky as if telling him a story about vastness. About things that cannot be explained. The image of the sun slowly disappearing below the horizon was not a natural phenomenon he had once analyzed, but a moment that made him feel as if he was touching something invisible and mysterious, far beyond science. In an instant, Elon felt as though he had been stripped of the tough shell he had created for so long. The walls he had built around himself to protect his reasoning seemed no longer important. Could this be the moment he began to see the world from a different perspective? From a dimension he had never considered before? The little girl looked up again, her eyes still fixed on the silent sky. Do you see? Whether there are clouds or wind, the sunset is still beautiful. My mom says it's God's way of telling us that he is always with us, even though we can't see him. For the first time in his life, Elon felt something suddenly fill his soul. The scene wasn't just a natural image, but a sign of an invisible presence. A presence he couldn't explain but could feel. Elon sat in a daze on an old wooden bench in the park, his eyes gazing dreamily at the sky slowly turning a warm golden hue. The space was still, only the sound of leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. The little girl sat down beside him, her eyes shining like the last light of a dying day. Have you ever thought about why we are here? She asked, her voice soft but full of curiosity. Why us? Why this life? Right now? Elon turned to look at her, his eyes filled with deep thoughts he had always avoided. Her words were like a breeze, stirring emotions in him that he had spent a lifetime denying. Maybe I've thought about it, but never found a clear answer, Elon replied, his voice a bit hoarse, as if every word carried a heavy weight. I've always looked for reasons in numbers, data, and theories, but, sometimes, all those things are just incomplete pieces. The little girl remained silent for a moment, then softly continued, her gaze turning upward toward the sky. I believe everything has a reason. Even the things I don't understand. Even the things greater than all of us. God created everything, even us. We are just a part of a bigger story. Her words were gentle, but it seemed they had touched a deep place in Elon's soul. A place he had tried to forget for so long. He turned back to look at the little girl, feeling as though he had stepped into an entirely different world. One where there were no equations or physical laws. Only faith and peace. So, according to you, do we have a purpose? Elon asked, his voice suddenly weak, as if searching for some comfort in unanswered questions. The little girl smiled, the smile of peace that only children can bring. Our purpose is to live, to love, to trust in things we cannot see, even when we feel tired and lost. Believing in God means believing in a purpose greater than all, one that we can only feel, not explain. Elon sat still, contemplating. Her words made him feel like a small light in the vast night sea. He had spent his whole life sharpening his mind, to discover things that could be proven and explained. But now, he realized that there were things far beyond what he could understand through science. You're right, Elon admitted, his voice slow, as if the words were gradually sinking in. Maybe I've been searching for too long in answers that sometimes aren't as important as the right questions. The little girl looked at him, her eyes sparkling as if she knew he was slowly realizing something he had never imagined. You don't need to have all the answers right now, she said, just believe in the good that God has created in us. And in every moment, Elon raised his head, looking toward the horizon. The fading light of the day gradually dimmed. But it wasn't an end. It was a transition, an ending to open up a new beginning. A feeling of humility crept into his heart. Perhaps, greatness wasn't in finding all the answers, but in accepting that there were things that couldn't be explained. And maybe, it was this humility that made life meaningful. I think I've started to see life through a different lens, Elon said, his voice gentle. Maybe, the things I've been searching for my whole life have always been right in front of me. The little girl sat down beside Elon, her gaze clear and her lips spreading a gentle smile. In the quiet space of the park, her voice softly echoed, carrying an unusual sense of calm. God doesn't hide from us, she said, her voice light as a breeze. Sometimes, we just need to stop and open our hearts to listen. These words were like a gentle wave soothing Elon's soul. Was he starting to listen to something different? A warm and peaceful feeling slowly crept into his heart. It wasn't a sudden enlightenment, but a slow, steady immersion into the darker corners of his heart. All the questions he had always avoided now seemed to be reaching a point where he no longer needed to run away. "Can God hear everything we say?" Elon asked, a bit surprised that he had posed this question. The little girl nodded, her eyes shining like jade, her voice soft but full of certainty. "Definitely. Even when we are sad, angry, or feel lost, He is always listening. My mom always says that His love has no limits. He loves us unconditionally, even when we feel distant and alone." An emotional wave surged within Elon. He had never thought about love in this way. To him, love had always been a human emotion, powerful, but limited. But what the little girl said made him wonder, could it be, just maybe, that there was something about love he had never fully understood? The sun slowly sank below the horizon, making way for the night to envelop everything. The stars began to appear in the sky, their light sparkling like jewels in the endless night. The little girl stood up, stretching, her clear eyes still looking at him with a pure smile, but also holding a maturity in her thoughts. "I have to go now," she said softly. "My mom will be waiting." Elon watched her, his heart suddenly heavy. An invisible sense of regret filled his chest. He wanted her to stay a little longer, to hear more of her simple but profound thoughts. But the little girl was ready to leave, leaving him to his own reflections. "Thank you," Elon said, his voice calm. "Thank you for talking with me." She smiled, her eyes shining like the stars in the night sky. "I'm happy too," she replied, then added with innocence but full of faith, "Remember, God is always with you. As long as you believe in Him." Elon sat back, watching her figure disappear into the darkness. Her words were like a seed sprouting in his soul, stirring up new thoughts. Could it be that he had overlooked something great? Had he been so focused on searching out there, in the vast universe, that he forgot that maybe the answer was right in his own heart? The night deepened, and the light from the stars above sparkled like shining points, casting light on Elon's wandering thoughts. Throughout his life, he had spent so much time dreaming of adventures in space. But now, he wondered if everything he longed for was truly out of reach. Or if those very questions were waiting for him to discover right within himself. As the night grew deeper, a strange sense of peace spread through him. It wasn't the peace that came from understanding everything, but the acknowledgement that it wasn't necessary to have all the answers. Perhaps something greater was waiting, something he had not recognized for so long. Sitting there, alone in the dark, surrounded by distant stars, Elon did something he had never done in many years. He quietly whispered a prayer. Could this prayer change his life? He didn't know, but what he did know was that, at this moment, he had found a peace he had never known. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was all he needed. Elon sat there, quietly feeling the stillness around him. The gentle breeze blew through the trees, creating sounds like the whispers of nature. The stars in the sky seemed like thousands of eyes watching over him, as if the universe was witnessing the changes in his heart. The little girl had gone far, but her words still echoed in Elon's mind. God is always with you. Just believe. That sentence was no longer just a simple piece of advice, but seemed to have become a new truth that he had never paid attention to. He had been someone who searched relentlessly, always yearning for answers from the farthest corners of the universe, from things he could conquer. But now, he realized that the answers he sought might not be far away, but might be right in his own heart. He looked up at the sky, feeling an odd sense of peace in his soul. It was not the peace that came from having all the answers, but the peace of accepting that not every question could be answered immediately. Sometimes, a little faith was enough to bring tranquility. And as he sat there, in the quiet space of the park, Elon Musk realized something. Perhaps it wasn't necessary to conquer the universe to find the answers. The true answer could be acceptance, faith in the unseen, in an unconditional love that not everyone could feel right away. And perhaps, that was what he had been searching for his entire life. He whispered to himself, the prayer still echoing in his heart, He is here, and I will believe. The feeling of peace continued to spread within him, like a gentle wave, encompassing and healing all his old wounds. Perhaps the answers had not yet come. Perhaps he still had to face challenges ahead. But he was ready to face them, not with his own strength, but with faith in something greater, something he had never fully understood until now. And as the stars in the sky continued to shine, Elon knew that his journey had entered a new chapter. Not of seeking, but of trusting. If you find this story meaningful and want to continue following these emotional journeys, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any videos. Share this story with your loved ones and let's explore the profound lessons in each video together. Thank you for watching, and we hope to meet again in the next stories. Note: this story is fictional, created for entertainment purposes and to convey meaningful messages about life, faith, and change. The events in the story do not reflect reality and are for exploration of deep human emotions.